Today's guest, Mike Lee.
Hey, what's up? How you doing, Carlos?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm wonderful, man.
You wrote an amazing book called Mies, and it's about the future of food. I have a personal copy. It's so cool. Why don't you tell the people about the book and about the work you do?
Yeah, the book Bees is a book of scenarios, four scenarios of the future of food, ranging from utopian to dystopian, everything between. It sort of feels like Black Mirror meets Bon Appetit, and I wrote it as a way for the industry to kind of have some space to just dream about the deeper future of what kind of emerging trends today all mean. Right now is a really interesting time in food. We've got food technology, AI. Different kind of ways of eating, ways of farming, all kind of coming together right now and sort of rising. And it's sort of undetermined, like what's going to quote unquote win out in the future, right? And so this is a space to kind of take some potential scenarios of what could happen in high tech and low tech things in food, and try to envision, what a world would look like if some of those things kind of go through with their visions and dreams in the future.
Yeah, and the book itself is a perfect example of what this podcast is about, where you utilize AI art within the book beautifully, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, and it just helps your scenarios you're talking about, illustrate them and showcase, visibly what could happen and how families could work in the future with AI and technology and food. So that's a good example because on the show we'd like to talk to companies who are actually utilizing the AI in their company. While
Mhm.
you used it in the book, what are some other ways that you are utilizing AI within your company with workshops and things like that?
Obviously, like the graphical layer of things like presentations and stuff like that, stock photo is kind of irrelevant at this point now for stuff like that. So, I mean, it still all kind of goes through the filter of my eye signing off on it, right? We're not to the stage yet where I think any of these things are just kind of hit the button and publish. But it greatly kind of accelerates kind of how you do things, right? It's like having a fleet of kind of robot workers kind of force multiplying you, but really it's up to you, the human, to decide how to direct them, right? Because the thing about kind of AI generative tools is it can amplify really good or really bad ideas really deeply. So
Yes.
no matter how you're using it, it doesn't preclude you from having well thought out good ideas. And often, if you've got a bad idea and you amplify it in generative AI, it's not going to be a good idea. It's just going to be a really bad idea executed very prolifically. So
Yes, prolifically. Yes.
so yeah, and then as far as the writing goes, I mean, still like all the writing is still written by me, but it I find it's like a really good, almost like a partner you would have in the writing room just to spitball ideas back and forth, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
um, in lieu of having a human to kind of do that. You can kind of play with ideas, start to map out different ideas, have it kind of generate long lists of potential ways to attack a topic, and then that might jog your memory or take you down another road. But yeah, again, it's more of like a sparring partner that can help you in the creative process, but still, it's really just a means to an end of enhancing human writing. And I'm still taking all that stuff and writing it all by myself after the fact for the final thing. But I use it going back and forth in the writing room and the brainstorm phase a lot.
I think that's a great point because, and something I wanted to bring up on the first episode is I think that prompting is huge when it comes to AI art and just in general AI, like prompting with the human, like you said, partner is a perfect example or explanation of it. Is that you are working with this AI? It's coming from you. There's a lot of stuff that you need to input. Like you said, if you input the wrong things, then it's gonna give you an extravagant wrong thing. But when you do it right, or when you kind of get your point across, it can act as that partner.
Hmm.
I do a lot of AI art, and when it's right, it's like the perfect version of what I was thinking in my head, and
Yeah,
I'm like, there it is. That's what I was trying to get at.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think the partner is a great explanation of that.
Yeah, I mean, like back I studied graphic design in art school at Parsons, and a lot of times, like, I would share with people at that time, like, oh, yeah, I'm in art school right now, and they would say stuff like, oh, you must be really good at Photoshop, or you must be really good at Illustrator, as if like conflating knowing that software is like what it means to be a good graphic designer. Where I think like actually going through the artistic process of design couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, it was really just drilled into me, and I believe this still today, that like the idea and the concept of your design is 90% of the thing, right?
Mm.
And it's not about Photoshop tricks, it's not about Illustrator tricks, right? Those are tools, right? But um you know and some of the best designs I've ever made like used extremely rudimentary kind of technical tools, right? It's just, how are you putting together images and words and stuff like that. So I would extend that same metaphor to um, image generation too. It's like when the means of production for what you're making become negligible, which AI image generation has done. The question of what to make is more important than ever, right? Because just because you can make a bunch of nonsense come out of Mid Journey doesn't mean you should,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
but also too, I think like, and I think this is something I really, really try to do in the book, is that the images there aren't just standalone images for the most part. They're there to support the story. So if you're reading the story, the images have context, they have meaning, right? So even like a simple image can actually have a lot of resonance with somebody because it's a crucial part of the story, right?
Hmm.
Whereas if you just flip through it and don't read any of the text, you might find the images kind of alluring or whatnot, but you're not getting the same kind of meaning out of it, right? Like, a picture of a room, you're like, okay, what's the big deal? That's just like a room, right? But you have to read the story to kind of realize the relevance of that room. So I think that's also the other kind of tool with AI generation, is that when anchored to a story, images, even simple images, are just much more impactful because they actually have some kind of meaning to them, and they're not just randomness, which the internet is full of a lot of just random garbage of image generation that
Yeah,
you're like, why, right?
yeah. You're like, why a lot?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
would think you're totally right, and especially because like nowadays Photoshop, and this is not really my app of the week, which we'll talk about at the end of the show, but Photoshop has AI generation within it that's
mhm,
being updated like every other day, and it's very good. And it
mhm.
allows you to again put anything anywhere inside an image. But to your point, you need to know what and why you want to put something in there. And that
Yeah,
comes down to the creator again and the kind of person who's trying to tell a story within the image and then, use that image for something else. So
yeah. I mean, I look at like you look at the full spectrum of video games, right? Like you have like the high end games like Call of Duty and things like that, and obviously those graphics are rendered insanely beautifully, and those are really big popular franchises. Then you look at something like Minecraft, which is by design like 8-bit low fidelity design, yet that has arguably equally the same amount of fan base as something that's like beautifully rendered like Call of Duty is, right? And so
mhm.
again, why, right? Like, and it's because like the game mechanics and the story drive it, not the graphical layer, right? And
Yeah,
so yeah, I think that that again, that's another kind of metaphor for just making sure you're actually nailing the things that matter first, and then adding the beautiful graphical or textual layer on it using AI.
definitely.
You can't go the other way around.
Yeah, you have to, it's where you start.
Hmm.
Back to your company, you work with AI art with the book, and in general, it seems like as like a writing partner, like we said. Is there anything else that you either on the horizon you want to use AI for within your company, or something you're doing that
I'm
we haven't
really
talked about?
I'm really chomping at the bit to see kind of get my hands on kind of like Sora and other video generators. I think that's going to be the next frontier. I mean, I think image generation, in my opinion, is more sophisticated right now than text generation. Maybe I just have different quality standards, but like I don't feel confident putting a chat GPT output in a book. Maybe
Yeah,
never, but obviously I do feel confident getting mid-journey images. But they're not like just turnkey. Like most of those images I did for the book take hundreds and hundreds of generations to kind of tweak and adjust, and I'm even adjusting in Photoshop. But um, yeah, I think image is super sophisticated right now. Maybe we're approaching a small plateau of development, improvement right now. But I think like having mature video generation is a humongous step function kind of thing for the AI world.
Yeah.
So I think that's the next frontier.
Yeah, we'll talk about video. It's almost like you're alluding to it at the very end of the show when I talk about my app of the week.
There you go.
Um, to close out this segment, what you do is kind of look and I don't know, tell the future or try to tell the future about what we could be doing with the food industry. How do you see the food industry right now potentially utilizing this AI technology in all its forms to better it, to make it better, like to help solve problems? And there's so many different ways that can happen.
Yeah.
But is there something that you're kind of got your eye on?
Well, framing it in terms of better is interesting because I think there's a lot of different definitions of what better is, right?
Yeah,
So, one instance that I think companies like Danone have been using, and this is public information, right? So, they've started to kind of use AI generated advertisements to target, people, right? Obviously, it's not a huge jump of creativity to think about how you can process all the inputs that you know about a person shopping or something like that, and then feed that into some sort of LLM image generator to give them like the quote unquote perfect app, right? So it's jury's out on which better that is, right? Because if
yeah,
you're the brand marketer and you're getting like huge boosts in click-through rates and purchase rates on those ads, hell yeah, that's better, right? Your campaigns got better, right? For consumers, maybe some consumers are of the mindset of like, I don't really hate ads per se. I hate ads that aren't relevant to me. Then maybe that's better for you because you're only seeing ads that kind of just speak to you, right? And maybe that's a good thing for that person. But there's probably also a ton of other people that think the opposite of that to say like, this is like total invasion of privacy. This feels too far, right?
yeah,
Over the line. So yeah, I mean the idea of better is just very subjective, I think. On the back end, like on farming and stuff like that, like AI is still kind of ascending to do a lot in this, but like using machine learning and stuff like that to help farming be more precise. So like instead of spraying the entire field with pesticides, precisely target the areas that need it, right? Or track rainfall and weather better so you can do crop planting better.
mm,
Some other people are also kind of combing through huge databases of ingredients that are kind of underused to look for molecules in them that could be useful or nutritious for people, right? And so all of that kind of there's a ton of stuff behind the scenes that's happening with machine learning and stuff like that. And arguably, I don't know, at least in the short term, I think a lot of the AI impact for the food industry might be more felt on the back end than like the stuff on your plate, um, so yeah, I think that's kind of where it's at. But like a lot of AI industries, it's still kind of evolving daily.
yeah. And definitely, like you said, the back end has like so many different places where there's, issues with, like you said, like how do we take care of the actual food itself? Like, how do
Yeah,
we manage this stuff? And there's a lot of like need for help there. But also on the ad side, like you said, you talked about relevant ads, but also I'm seeing so many AI video generated ads because even though Sora isn't out yet, there's a ton of other apps. And McDonald's had a huge one just recently. I don't know if you saw it. I think it was in Japan, and it was all AI video, and it wasn't the best because there's better, and they just released it. And so I think that's a question of like, will the consumers be pushed back on that a lot right now? Will that kind of backfire on some ads, or
yeah,
because it is maybe in quotes cheaper than going to a huge thing and filming all this stuff and having actors, but then is it worth it in the end? Because we're in that such that in between uncanny valley still.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's where you get in trouble, I think, too, because I think pushing a launch of something that is meant to be, oh, a fully conversational avatar to take your McDonald's order or Burger King order or Taco Bell order or whatever, um, you do run the risk of, if it's not ready for prime time, just alienating people from it forever, you know? And like, I think about still like, I had to call my bank today to reset a password, and you're presented with the usual greetings of some robot, that doesn't
Yeah.
really quite understand you. And I'm like, I'm still shocked that those things exist, and I kind of just completely hate them, right? And so, that's why, even like for the longest time, like I remember when, like, before ChatGPT went live to the public, people were murmuring about it. They're like, "Oh, it's the next generation chatbot," right? And immediately my mind went to the thing that, from my bank, of like, oh, that's those bots are the worst, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I didn't then well quickly realized, like, oh, this is a completely new generation. But yeah, I think, like, with the customer experience, you got to be really careful on that, of putting something out there that people just might get completely turned off on, because you might not get a chance to put it back in.
And it's also timing because, like, we were talking about ads, but now you're also bringing up the ordering, which is a huge thing as well. Talk about Wendy's. I think Wendy's rolled it back out again when it comes to AI taking your order. And, they rolled it out early. They got it wrong. It was bad. Like you said, gave a lot of bad people a bad taste in their mouth, pun intended. And then now it's pretty good. Like, I heard, like, the new Wendy's one or whatever is like, it works, it's functional.
Yeah.
And so I think it's all about timing as well. Cause if you do it too early, like you said, people are like, well, I'll never do this again. But
Well,
it's only going to get better, right?
I think when you switch to a conversational platform that emulates a human conversation, especially in a drive-through window where you're not seeing the person anyway, the expectations change, right? Because if you've just got a menu of a kiosk where there's just buttons, my expectations are pretty low, right? And the kiosk can really meet them. I know I'm going to push a button here. Maybe I want my fries extra well done, but I'll type that into a little box and, like, cross my fingers that somebody reads it. But I'm not expecting to have, like, ask uh, out of the box questions of that, right? And
Mm,
so the kiosk is fine, right? That works. But, like, once it's a conversation, I think some people kind of, if you can't, like, actually like, ask it something that's not part of the script and have it intelligently respond to you, that kind of creates, like, an opportunity for kind of dissatisfaction, right? Like, I should be able to ask the bot something like, oh, can you mix, like, the mayo and the mustard together and put that on my burger?
mhm.
uh, that's something you could totally ask a human, and they'll give you a response, yes or no, or, like, we'll see what we can do. But, like, I don't know that, and maybe that's where LLMs and stuff like that really come in, is that no one's going to sit there and hard code all the possible questions that people can ask. But the beauty of machine learning and LLMs is you don't have to, right? And so we'll see, right? But I do think that once you switch to conversational, you kind of almost have to have it be able to do almost everything a human could do, you know, to
Yeah.
not kind of disappoint people.
And I think that's the future. Obviously, we talk about a lot of us in the industry talk about AGI and the next step of, where does AI go from here? How smart can it get? What compute power does it need to get there? Which is a huge part of this. And at the end of the day, that's what that is. That's that agent that goes, yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying. And I'll figure it out if I don't. And I'll learn from what you said in the past. And I'll learn from other customers. That's a huge thing. The short term memory bit, which is, I think, being talked about a lot now, where if they get to that point where the LLM really understands that short term memory, can learn on it, then, the fifth customer or the 100th customer, it's like making jokes. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, "Yeah, you want that the ketchup and the mayonnaise together? Totally, my mom used to do that." It says,
Yeah.
"My robot mom used to do that."
But yeah, even with, like, jokes, right? It's like, unless, I don't know, it's almost like all or nothing, right? Like, unless you're gonna actually really tell a joke that's gonna actually make someone, even if it's a corny joke that makes somebody laugh, like, it's better off to maybe not even try, right?
Oh,
Like, I'd rather just have a totally sober, like, boring conversation with a fast food person rather than have to suffer through insanely terrible jokes? So you gotta have to, like, clear that gap if you're
yeah.
gonna go.
No, you type in LM, "No jokes, please."
Yeah,
Not at
exactly.
Wendy's. Well, to close it out, we were talking about video, we're talking about ads. One of the tools I'm using a lot now is Runway Gen 3. If you pay an absorbent amount, you can have unlimited generations within Runway video generation. So it's text to video, but it's also image to video, which is huge. Image to video, if you don't know and you're listening, essentially you give it an image, which you probably made in another AI platform. It will do its best to take that image and even look at like a last image, first image, last image, and build stuff in between, build
Yeah,
video from it. And you need a kind of unlimited plan, in my experience, to get these results. Because if you're like worrying about credits and how many times you can do something, it's not going to work. So I
yeah,
usually look for unlimited plans if they have them. And so I've used it a ton. Again, some results are amazing. Some results are total horror show and just broken mess that you can never even use anything with. Have you messed with it? And have you tried it? And what are your thoughts just on, in general, the video layer of this with AI?
I haven't used that one specifically. I've used a couple others, just here and there, some open source ones as well too. And yeah, I don't know. I'll have to give yours a try because yeah, most of what I've kind of seen so far is kind of either horror show or like if it's good, it's like a very limited like length animation, like a 3 second thing, and it's more like making kind of like a cinematograph or like animated
Mm,
GIF kind of thing where something's moving fluidly, right? But I haven't yet been able to generate like a minute worth of stuff, right? But again, like this could all change in 6 months, right? And so, but I think that's because like, especially if you think about like people that show videos in like court trials or just like, oh, I got you on video doing this or that, right? That has been sort of the gold standard of like, I gotcha, right?
mm,
And it's kind of terrifying to me that the gold standard of like we have you on a video doing X, Y, and Z can ultimately be faked, right? Like deepfake images are an issue, right? And people are like kind of dealing with that right now, which is a big issue. Deepfake video, I think, is a whole other thing, right? And
it
so
is, yeah.
it's good, but it also like and then that's not even to say of like the entire Hollywood machine of what that means for them, right? Like maybe you're not doing the close-ups of in a crucial moment in the movie in AI, but like you look at big blockbusters, how much of it is green screen, computer generated already, and like just having the video in there, being able to do so much more of that is just going to
Yeah.
be insane for the creative output, but then also the industry as it is.
I think in the short term, with my experience with Runway Gen 3, which is probably one of the best right now, besides Kling, which is another one,
Mm,
is character consistency is terrible. So it can't really do character consistency well. With AI images, it can, but video, it's really hard. And I have got some pretty great results that aren't just cinemagraph 3 seconds and you can extend them.
cool.
And so I think a huge part of it is, I'm speaking of two things. One, I'm saying don't worry about, I think, Hollywood yet, or even just like deep fakes yet, because currently it's really hard. Are we moving very fast? Yes. In the next 5 years is going to be totally crazy.
Hmm.
But right now, even the next year or so, it's like really difficult to do stuff where you're like, oh, that's not me and I'm doing something weird on video. It's hard. But I'll say on the positive end, if you're making creative stuff, it goes back to what we said before about having a partner. Like AI,
Hmm.
Runway Gen 3 for me is a partner in video, and it's comes down to my prompting. And like you said earlier, it comes down to my vision. And
Yeah.
so I did a music video, which I made the music in Suno, which is great.
Yeah, I've used Suno. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
Suno's
awesome.
really Suno's scary good, actually.
Scary good.
Yeah.
And made the music in Suno, made a music video with Runway Gen 3 by prompting, being really smart with prompting, doing tons of generations, but then still taking all that video into Adobe Premiere and making it work, right? Cutting off the parts where it got crazy and didn't look
Mhm.
good. So again, vision. I'm happy with that music video. That music video is like a minute long and it's everything that I want it to be. But it took a lot of me in that.
Yeah. Well, I liken it to the early days of electronic music, right? Like you listen to Kraftwerk, and I don't think anybody mistakes those for acoustic real drums, right? But
Mhm.
and I think if you kind of go in expecting to hear that kind of sound, like you're going to be really disappointed. Whereas, like I think I love Kraftwerk, and people who love Kraftwerk love them because they are an electronic sound. They're kind of embracing the limitations of the synthesizer and the drum machine, not being upset about the fact that it doesn't really sound like a real violin or a hand clap, right? And
Yeah.
we've seen that legacy come on all the way from techno to hip hop and sampling and stuff like that. And so I think what you're describing is a similar analogy where I think, okay, in this meantime, until we have super high fidelity, undetectably, fake images, sort of lean into just the medium of what it offers, right?
Yes.
And you can still produce really, really great stuff. It's just a different workflow. And so, yeah, I think I would imagine in the future we might be able to look at it the way we look at kind of electronic music and sampling based hip hop versus classical music and jazz and all these other things, right? They're not better per se, they're not worse per se. They're just different. It's just a different genre with different timbre, different things like that. And I think there's room for all of it. So, yeah.
That's a great point. Think about, yeah, the sampler isn't around, and then what music we wouldn't have. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally, yeah, and
yeah,
it wasn't until a while after kind of the first synthesizers were made where, like, the things could reproduce, like, acoustic instrument like, now you can reproduce an acoustic instrument digitally extremely well where most people can't tell the difference, right?
yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't like that the whole time,
No, it
so
wasn't. Well, Mike, thanks for being on the show. I love
yeah,
talking AI, and I love talking AI with you. People can get your book Mise on your website.
yeah, no, mise.market, MISE dot market, MARKET.
There you go. And we'll have you back on the show. And thanks for being here.
I can't wait.
Let's go make some AI stuff.
Hey.